Good morning. Here we are, day 11 of the 12 days of Christmas. We're continuing our two-part series on the forgotten ones here. Yesterday was Simeon, today is Anna. And so let me read this passage to you. Once again, these characters are not found in any nativity scene. They were at the temple in Jerusalem while Jesus was being brought there, while the purification was taking place, the sacrifices were being made. And so these folks were not at the nativity scene. They were not in the manger, at the manger. They were not in the stable. But let's read this passage from Luke chapter 2, verses 36 through 38. And there was a prophetess, Anna, the daughter of Phanuel, of the tribe of Asher. She was advanced in years, having lived with her husband 7 years from when she was a virgin, and then as a widow until she was 84. She did not depart from the temple, worshiping with fasting and prayer night and day. And coming up at that very hour, she began to give thanks to God and to speak of him to all who were waiting for the redemption of Jerusalem. So here we are, Jesus and his parents arrive at the temple. Of course, we remember Simeon yesterday being assured by God that he would see the salvation, the Lord's Christ, before he would depart from this place. And now we have Anna, who from early on in life spent all of her time in the temple, praying and fasting since becoming a widow. And so she did not depart, worshiping with fasting and prayer, the passage says. And then here's this little thing that takes place, this little shift that takes place, that last verse. And coming up at that very hour, she began to give thanks to God and to speak of him to all who were waiting for the redemption of Jerusalem. What I think is so important here in this passage is that we see Anna, this balance between piety and also practicality. So we have this prophetess who's given her life to praying and fasting in the temple. But when she encounters Jesus, and when this truth becomes life in front of her, this person of Jesus is right in her midst, what does she do? She doesn't just soak it all in her heart. She's doing that, but she also, as it says, goes and speaks of him to all who are waiting for the redemption of Jerusalem. She opens her mouth about her experience with the Lord's Christ, with Jesus. And so there's this balance between piety and practicality all the time, right? This rings so true for us in our lives. Sometimes it's almost easier to be pious than it is to be practical, and sometimes it's easier to be practical than it is to be pious. And I don't think we have to favor either one of those too much. I think they play hand in hand with each other, as we can see here with Anna as Jesus arrives. When we come to know Jesus, we're put into this spot where our heart and our mind should long for more and more and more. And so we enter into these disciplines of prayer and fasting, and we enter into these ritualistic pieces of the faith where we gather to worship weekly, where we take communion together, where we do all these things that are quite pious in nature, right? But when we come to know Jesus, that happens on one side. On the other side, there's this practical nature of the faith where we don't want to just harbor all of it in. We have to spread it out. We have to share it. We have to speak to all those who are waiting for the redemption of Jerusalem, that this Messiah has arrived. We have to tell the good news to others as well. We can't just keep it all to ourselves. So it's not, in Paul's words, it's not just, or in the letter that James wrote, it's faith and works together. It's piety and practicality in a precious and holy balance. This mix of when you're alone, you're all for Christ, and when you're out and about and with others, you're all for Christ. This mix of piety and practicality. And Anna gives us a great example of that. Don't forget about Anna. She's a part of the story too, just like Simeon, and she's an important part of the story. And so use her as an example. Read this passage again today. How's that in your life? This balance of piety and practicality. Just think on those things today. Have a wonderful day, this 11th day of Christmas.